Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Great Backyard Bird Count Training webinar. I'm Paul, the Nature Wanderer, and we are going to talk a little bit about how to do the Great Backyard Bird Count, which, by the way, is this weekend, February 14th through the 17th. It is always the same weekend as President's Day. That way you get 4 days to count the birds, and hopefully you have President's Day off so that you can use that as one of the days that you count. And I'll explain all about what to do. And then at the end, I am going to do a brief bird ID workshop. So if you want to leave after you've learned enough about how to count the birds, how to do the Great Backyard Bird Count, that's fine. The birds I'm going to be showing you are essentially in the northeastern US, which we could probably say the eastern US. Some of them can be found in other parts of the US as well. And some of the birds I'm going to talk about could probably be found all over the world. So let's get started. So 4 days of birding fun. Yes, it is fun. I always enjoy doing the Great Backyard Bird Count. I can't even remember how many years I've been doing it. I really enjoyed it. It is a lot of fun. But like I said, it's this weekend, February 14th through the 17th, Friday. So it starts in 2 days. If you're watching this video on the actual day of the bird count, because I will be recording it and putting it on my YouTube channel for you as well. So the Great Backyard Bird Count, you may hear me refer to it as the GBBC, just to shorten it a little bit. It's a long name, but anyhow, it is global. It's all over the world. So it's not just in the US. So hopefully you're watching from another country. That would be awesome. But people all over the world, they join in on this 4-day event. You can do it very easily. You can share the birds that you found easily. The easiest way to do the Great Backyard Bird Count, if you have one of these apps on your phone, my favorite out of all these is the eBird app. My second favorite, probably Merlin. You can also do it on a computer if you wish. You can do it on a tablet, but the best thing to do is have a phone with you while you're doing it and download, if you don't already have it, either the eBird or Merlin app. If you're outdoors birding, maybe on a hike, which I like to do, I would recommend having both these available. The Merlin is great for getting bird calls, identifying them by their sound, by their call. It usually picks up stuff I don't. Or we'll talk a little bit more about the apps in a little while. So there's options with Merlin. Merlin has sound ID, it has step by step. So in other words, if you see a bird and you're unsure what that bird is, they will have, okay, what size is the bird? What color is the bird? Where was it seen? So you go through all these steps and hopefully it narrows it down to your bird. If not, it'll get it pretty close. It is really good. I mostly use it for the sound ID, but they also have photo ID as well. And if you're just curious about birds, you can explore the different birds. Maybe you've never known what a dark-eyed junco looks like, and you want to find out. Well, just put it in and you can find out. Now, eBird, like I said, my favorite to use. If it's great if you're new to bird watching, and it's the reason is because you can actually it helps you to get to know your birds. It's got great pictures in there. It does have a whole section on identifying birds. I know most of my birds, so I will just use it for recording what birds I've seen, my life list, or when I do bird counts like this. So eBird is best if you know your birds. But I like it even if you don't know them that well. It does have a learning curve. Um, it allows you to count the birds much easier. That's why I like it. It allows you to count them much easier. Merlin's probably the best for new birders, though. So I would recommend Merlin if you're a new birder. If you've been birding a while, eBird, definitely. They also have a free, that's always a good thing, free eBird Essentials course. So it tells you all about how to use eBird. And of course, on the All About Birds websites, there is eBird Essentials. So the website's listed right there. And by the way, I'm going to go back one, because if you look at the bottom here, the Great Backyard Bird Count is actually sponsored by Birds Canada, Audubon, and Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So watch and count the birds anywhere. So that's the first part of learning how to do Great Backyard Bird Count. Anywhere you are, doesn't matter where you are, you can count them. I know it says backyard in the title, but it doesn't have to be in your backyard. I usually do my own yard. I will count, I usually go for a hike or two, and I'll count there. I spend my Saturdays at my wife's pottery shop, so I help her out at the pottery shop. So when I have a short break, I'll go outside and I'll count the birds around her shop. So yeah, I'm counting them all over the place, but you can do it in your own yard. You can go hiking, taking a walk in through your town. If you live in the city, walk through the city. A lot of people think, oh, I can't count the birds. I live in the middle of the city. Yeah, you can walk down the streets of the city. Parks, preserves, schools, nature centers, anywhere you want. You know, you can count the birds everywhere. Now, some people, I do substitute teaching, and I always promote the Great Backyard Bird Count to my students. Like, hey, you got nothing to do this weekend. Why don't you, count the birds? And they're like, why? And I get that question a lot. Why would you want to sit around all weekend counting birds? Well, it's not all weekend. Can be, but it's not. Well, it's fun, and it connects you to nature. It keeps long-term records of the birds for your sake and for scientists. The scientists, they use this information. This is a citizen science project, which means that the scientists are depending on the average everyday citizen to basically help them out to collect data. They can't be everywhere collecting data, so we're here to help them collect data. It puts your observations to work for conservation as well. The scientific data that we collect and we enter, it goes to different organizations, and they can use that information to help persuade legislation to help conservation, to let people know how the birds are doing in certain areas, what we need to do to help the birds, and in the long run, helping our environment. Uh, what do you learn from doing this? Well, migration, or I should say, what do the scientists learn? I mean, you learn it too. I'm consider myself kind of a scientist, but migration patterns, year to year changes, long-term trends. Now you're probably wondering, well, what do I do? Here's the easy instructions. I mean, it's so easy to take part in the Great Backyard Bird Count. First of all, you watch and count the birds anywhere for 15 minutes. That's it, 15 minutes. You can go longer. Doesn't mean you watch your time. 15 minutes is up. Okay, I'm done. No. If you can only spare 10 minutes, don't do it that day. Find a time when you can do it for at least 15 minutes. Maybe you have a couple hours to, sit around and drink your coffee in front of the window that looks out to your bird feeders in the morning. Do it for 2 hours. Do it for 3 hours. Maybe you want to go on a 3-hour hike. Great. Do your birding the entire 3-hour hike, but at least minimum 15 minutes. So it's not saying just 15 minutes, it's saying at least 15 minutes. And number two, like I said, watch longer if you want. You need to keep track of the time, which if you're using eBird, like I do, it actually keeps track of your time. So you push the start button, I'm starting birding, push the start button, and it starts counting. So it keeps track of the time. Also keep track of the place. eBird does that for you. Well, it will help you to do that. You have to locate the place, put your address in, your location, but it can pinpoint where you are as well. Do a best estimate on the numbers. Okay, individual of each species observed, especially if you're using eBird, they want to know that information. So it's like I saw 6 juncos at my bird feeder. 3 of them were on the ground, 3 of them were up on the feeder. They flew away and then they flew back, and this time there were only four. Is that another four, or is it the original six? Well, probably the same six birds. Okay, it was the same group, only four returned, the others didn't. Um, if you see them, if you see more come in, count those too. Okay. Oh, there were six Juncos, two more just they were added on. Okay, now I have eight Juncos I can count. So you're trying to do your best estimate. Now, what happens if you have a flock fly over? That's where it gets tough. That's training, doing it over and over again. I've done so many bird counts. I do the Christmas bird count, the Great Backyard Bird Count. I do a lot of different bird counts. And I've learned when you have a big flock flying over, you can estimate how many are in like one little area. And then you see how many of those areas are and just multiply. Okay, so that little batch is 10, and let's see. Okay, there's about 200 birds here. So do your best estimate. If you see a bunch of birds and you can't count them because they're in the bush, you're just hearing them, try to take a good guess. I mean, when you're hearing crows, I don't always see the crows, I hear the crows, I count them. Okay. And usually when they're overlapping or if they're in different locations, you can get a good guess at how many. So it doesn't have to be exact. If you can do an exact number, that's great. The scientists love that. But if you can't, do your best estimate of the numbers. Now, what you'll need to do this. Oh, wait a minute. That's it for the directions? Yes, it is. That's it. That's simple. 15 minutes. Watch longer if you wish. Keep track of your time and best estimate numbers. That's it. You're done. Well, not totally done. You have to keep track of it and enter the data. Now, if you're using eBird or Merlin, it's doing that for you. It's entering the data for you. Otherwise, you can just keep track on a piece of paper, maybe in the notes on your phone. And then when you get home, go on your computer and go to the eBird site or the Great Backyard Bird Count site, which is birdcount.org, and you can enter the data on there. So what you need something to count with, either pad of paper or, like my suggestion, use the birding apps, either Merlin or eBird. Okay, either one of those. If you're new, use Merlin. If you've been birding a while, you know most of your birds, use eBird. Maybe if you're new, find a birding friend, someone who really knows their stuff. Great way to get into birding. The second thing you do is you enter your location in Merlin or eBird. You enter where you are birding. They often have, I believe that eBird has a mapping tool. I don't use Merlin a lot for entering data. I use it mostly for identifying bird calls. But enter your location, the area that you're in. Track the amount of time, which eBird will automatically do. You can also go to the website, which is birdcount.org, and they have all the information you need on how to do this, what I'm actually talking about here, but you can also enter your data there as well. Okay, now this is important stuff here. If you use Merlin or eBird already, you're already ready to do it. All you have to do is log into your account, start using it, start counting the birds. Any eBird or Merlin counts, data entry during this weekend from Friday through Monday is automatically put into the bird count. Yep, counts towards the Great Backyard Bird Count. So nothing extra you have to do. Okay, now if you are new to the Great Backyard Bird Count, or the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, you do need to create an account. So try to do this on Thursday or today or whenever. Try to do it ahead of time just to get it out of the way. You can do it that day. It doesn't take long to create an account. Any other accounts or any other projects, citizen science projects, like I do NestWatch, and that's part of Cornell. So I am registered through there as well. And it's all the same account for any of these apps. Now you also need to track the amount of time you watch. So if you're not using eBird, which automatically does that, you need to write it down and then enter it later in either Merlin, or if you're doing it online, your data entry. That's why I recommend using eBird. It pretty much does everything for you. So here's some step-by-step directions. Visit the participate page on the birdcount.org and follow the guide on how to use Merlin or eBird. Okay, so it's birdcount.org/participate. And this will give you the same information I'm giving you, but in a written form. Okay, so after you submit your birds, you can review and edit the list. You can share your list with others in your group if you're going together, which is awesome to do. Usually the Christmas bird counts, my wife and I do together. A lot of the Great Backyard Bird Count, my wife and I do together. I used to go with a group for the Christmas bird count, but I changed my circle because I moved. So I'm counting a different area. The GBBC, I have done that with friends before, which is a lot of fun. We go for a birding hike, and the more eyes you have, the more ears you have, the more birds you can end up counting. So you're actually helping more. You can submit another list too. I'll explain that in a minute. Oh, I'll explain it now because I don't want to get to the identification yet. So I'm often asked some of the questions I get asked about this. I went through the basics. I know I went through it really quick, but there really isn't much to it. It's really simple to do. So a lot of people get scared. It's like, I gotta count the birds, not to the, no, it's easy. Okay. And they have the tools, whether you're new to birding or you're an experienced birder, they have the tools to help you out. So what you need to do, some of the questions I'm asked, can I count more than once during the weekend? Do I have to count every day? Do I have, so like I said, at least 15 minutes on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You can do it every single day. You can do it more than once each day. You can do it just once the whole weekend. Maybe you don't have time, you have a busy weekend. I know I'm off doing stuff on Sunday, so I probably won't have time. I don't know. I may do some birding up at my son's house, or we have a family thing going on. So I may, sit there and look out the window every once in a while and see what birds are out there. I'll have to tell him to put a bird feeder out. I don't think he has one, but that's the sort of thing. And while I'm driving up to his house, it's a hour and a half drive to get to his house. I'm probably going to be birding along the way. I see some hawks. I'm going to keep track of them sitting alongside the road. If I see a flock of birds along the road, I'm going to count them all. So that's going to be included. But anyhow, back to the questions I just came up with. I'm often asked, can I bird more than once? Yes. You can bird more than once in a day. So maybe you have time in the morning to do 15 minutes. That's great. Enter that data. And then in the afternoon, you have a couple hours. Even better, you enter that data. It has to be a new list, though. You can't use the same list. It's a new list. Then you have the next day you're busy, you can't go birding. On Sunday, you're free, you go birding, you go for a walk with some friends through the woods and you do birding at that time. Record it. And then in the evening, you want to sit there and watch out your window, record it. Okay. Maybe on Monday, you're just hanging around the house watching movies in your PJs all day. You just sit there looking out the window at the bird feeders every once in a while. Hey, that's great. You can do it the entire day. Just remember, if you have 5 starlings come to your feeder, and then later you have 10 starlings, count the biggest number if you're on the same count. And what I mean by that, if you're birding in the morning, you see 5 starlings, you're birding in the afternoon, it's a new list. Okay, so you see 4 starlings. You don't know if they're the same starlings, even though they're at the same feeders. They might be, they might not be. So count them. Okay, that's how you do it there. So hopefully that answers the question about, do I have to do it every day? No, you don't. Okay, can I do it more than once during the day? Yes, you can. Can you bird at night? Yes. That's great. I used to have some friends, the Christmas bird count, they would go out early morning. I'm sorry, I'm sleeping in. I'm getting up at sunrise. Yes, because that's when you're going to see the most birds. By the way, sunrise. Okay, get up. That's when you're going to see the most birds. That's when they're most active. So, but anyhow, they would get up before sunrise. They would be up at like 2 in the morning. They're out owling. They're looking for owls, and they usually come up with some too. So yeah, it's an awesome thing to do. So if you want to do that, great. Whenever you want to, any time of the day. I think those are usually the biggest questions I get. Okay. If you're unsure of a species, don't count it or count it as the general species. Like maybe you see a finch. Okay, you don't know if it's a purple finch or a house finch. You're not sure. You didn't get a good enough view. Use binoculars. That's my recommendation. But you didn't get a good enough look. You weren't sure. Just put it down as a finch species. You'll see it SP period. So that means species. So some sort of finch. You know, that's fine. That's what they want to know. Should you count species like a house sparrow? You know, non-native species? Sure. You know, I want to know that information too. Okay, let's move on to some idea. And like I said, this is it. That's all there is to the bird count. So if you want to leave now because you don't live in the eastern part of the United States and these are probably not your birds, that's fine. You don't have to watch the rest of the presentation. But I wanted to get these out there and curve identification. These are the most common species you might come across in the eastern US. This guy, he's kind of one of my favorites. I love these guys. They can be nasty at a bird feeder. They're very, very bully birds. This is the common blue jay. And I have the names written by everyone just so that you can, you know, tell what it is. This is a blue jay, very common in the area. They are usually hanging around our feeders. You'll usually hear them too. If you're unsure of what they sound like, Cornell has a great section on their website of bird sounds. So look up blue jay and they'll have a bunch of different calls that they make. These guys are goldfinch. This time of year, you probably won't see the bright yellow and black of the goldfinch. That's the male, and they're not quite in their breeding plumage right now. They're all going to look kind of like that dull yellow, like the female there. So it may be a little tough this time of year to tell whether it's a male or female, and that's all right as long as you're counting the species. You don't always have to know the sex. Oh, I love these guys. They're usually showing up in springtime for me, so I will be getting them soon, I hope. Rose-breasted grosbeaks, very chunky beak, that bright red on the neck, and the rest of them is that really rich black and white. Now, the female grosbeak looks just like this as far as shape goes, but the color is brown. Yeah, very brown in color. So don't let it fool you. Look for that chunky beak. Another one of my favorites. These guys I always hear more than I see them. They will come to feeders. They like the peanut feeders. They like the seed feeders. This is a black-capped chickadee. Chickadee-dee-dee-dee, chickadee-dee-dee-dee. They say their own names, so I often hear them hanging out in the brush. They like bushy areas. So they'll be hanging out in the brush. So even if you see one or two at your feet, or if you're outside and you're also listening, you may hear more than that around you. So also in the springtime, that's the call they make. That's their mating call. I just got my dogs excited here because I was whistling. These guys are what a lot of people consider the bird of winter. Yeah, they really stand out against the snow. Easy to see. Northern cardinals, female on the left, male on the right. Easy to spot even up in the trees. Yeah, they really stand out. And this, some people call them a dark-eyed junco, sleek-colored junco, eastern junco. They have a lot of different names, but the sleek-colored junco, very white belly, kind of a grayish back and chest. The male can have very dark color to them, but I mean, female and male look very similar, so don't try to, you know, identify them, you know, as male and female. I've stuck these two together. So some people mistake one for the other because the rock pigeon, most people know as a pigeon, they can have lots of different colors. I've seen the white, black, grays, the iridescent neck. This is the standard color of the rock pigeon. You're going to see a lot of them if you're in the city or residential areas. Mourning dove, they're the ones who do the call that sounds kind of like an owl. A lot of people think, oh, I have an owl in the middle of the day out at my feet. No, it's a mourning dove. They make that call, which sounds like they're in mourning for a lost loved one. That's where the name came from, mourning dove. These guys are absolutely beautiful. You might not see them this time of year if you live up north around my neck of the woods. I'm up in Western New York, and they like eating berries and insects. So they'll come back a little bit later in the spring, but once in a while you get lucky and you find them coming back a little early if it's warm enough for them. If you live further south, you will probably see them around. This guy here, the American robin, he's not eating the apple. What he's doing is he's looking for the bugs that came to the apple. That's why he put these out, is it attracts the fruit eaters, and the apples will also attract bugs, and the insect eaters like them because they're eating the bugs at them. So this is the American robin. Male and female look pretty much the same unless you are really good at birding and they're really close to you. Like I do bird banding, so I often have them right in my hand. And you can tell the males have a little bit darker color in their wings, and the head too. So it's really difficult though. So once again, you're just counting the birds. Male, female, doesn't matter. Okay, you're just counting the birds. These guys are often mistaken for each other because they both feed on the same thing. They're about the same size. They both have a lot of the same habits, but one is a white-breasted nuthatch and the other is a red-breasted nuthatch. If you're unsure, put down nuthatch species. Okay, but the way to tell, the red-breasted obviously has that bright red breast. The white-breasted has a white breast. But if you look towards the tail on this one, the white-breasted, you can see there is a little bit of orange there, a little bit of redness. Also look for the eye line. If there's a black line going right through the eye, that's the red-breasted nuthatch. If there's no eye line, that's the white-breasted nuthatch. So that's how you can tell the two of them apart. They're basically seed eaters. So if you have peanut feeders up, you're going to get these guys. Yeah, they love coming to the peanut feeders. Brown creepers, a little bit smaller than the nuthatch. They have a curved beak. They're primarily an insectivore. So if you live up in the north by me, you probably won't get them this time of year. If it was warmer out, I have seen them at the Great Backyard Bird Count, but only when we've gotten a real good warm up. And I do see these guys. They hang out in the winter time here in Western New York State's bird. This is the eastern bluebird. If you live further south, you might get the mountain bluebird. Damn it, shut the fuck up. Go lay down. This is the eastern bluebird, this is the eastern bluebird, the state, thank you. This is the eastern bluebird, the state bird of New York. The female is the one on the left. Not a lot of blue in her, but she does have a lot of red on the chest. The male has all that red, but very blue on the wings and the head. Even in the winter time, they have these colors. And these guys, once again, they're a springtime bird here in Western New York, spring and summer. You can find them further south, though. They are insectivores. They eat insects, so that's why you don't see them around here in the winter time. This is the tree swallow, one of my favorite birds. If you have bluebird boxes on your property, you'll probably see the tree swallows. They like nesting in bluebird boxes. I used to have 20, what was it, 25 bluebird boxes on my property. And I usually got maybe 6 or 7 of them had nesting tree swallows, whereas I would get 2, maybe 3 bluebirds in my boxes as well. Always love the wrens. Yeah. Unless you're really good at um, listening to them, you don't know what type of wren it is. So just put a wren species if you see wrens around. Once again, these guys are usually found here in the summer and spring. They can be found here in the winter time, but usually they're insectivores, so they have trouble finding food up here in the cold in the winter. So more of a summer species here. You will find them further down south, though, even this time of year. And I have seen wrens at the Christmas bird count and the Great Backyard Bird Count before. I have seen them before, usually in more residential areas where they're finding more cover, more place to get out of the cold. And another summer visitor, the Oriole, Baltimore Oriole. Yeah, these guys are beautiful. They're down south now, so you probably won't see them if you're in the Northeast here. Same with the indigo bunting, another summer bird, springtime, summer. Very beautiful. Stand out if you can find them. Not easy to see. I usually hear them before I see them. These guys are winter bird, house finch and purple finch. I put these guys on the same slide so you can see the difference. Okay, more brown on the belly and the chest on the house finch. The purple finch, very little brown on the chest and belly. The purple finch seems to be more iridescent when I see them too on their head. So it's, and I know a lot of people are like, what purple? I don't see any purple. Well, you don't want to call it a redfinch, I guess. I don't know how they named it, but red-winged blackbirds and grackles, I put these two together because they're often mistaken when they come to your bird feeders. I haven't seen the grackles back yet, nor the red-winged blackbirds, but they'll be coming back soon. Now, these guys are a winter bird. You will see them. They're here year round, pretty much. They're able to get at the insects under the bark in the winter with that strong beak. So that's why the woodpeckers, and there's a lot of different types of woodpeckers around. The woodpeckers are going to be very common during the Great Backyard Bird Count. The one on the left is the downy woodpecker. The one on the right is the hairy, often mistaken for each other. They look very similar. The downy is smaller. If you look at the beaks, the length of the beak is shorter than the width or the depth of the head. Okay, so from the beak to that red spot on the back of the head, that's what I mean by the depth of the head. And the beak on the downy is shorter than the depth of the head. If the beak is about the same length as the depth of the head or longer, that is the hairy woodpecker. Now, both these are pictures of males. They have that red spot on the back of the head. The females won't have that. So if you see a woodpecker and it doesn't have the red spot, don't think it's not one of these woodpeckers. It's just a female. And here's 2 other woodpeckers. I get a lot of the red-bellied at my feeders. Usually they like the peanuts and the suet feeders. They have that red drape going from the beak all the way down to the back of the head. If it wraps around the front, the face of the head and the cheeks, that's a red-headed woodpecker. This is the red belly. You'll notice some red on the belly. It's kind of a reddish orange, sometimes a yellowish color on the belly. So that's why they got the name the red-bellied woodpecker. And if you see a really big woodpecker, and they have that tuft on the back of their head there. That is the pileated, or you can say pileated, they're both correct. The pileated woodpecker, very large bird, very black in color, and they've got that red patch on the head. And there's the picture of the red-headed woodpecker that I was talking about, red all around, even on the cheeks and the face. They like to hang out a lot around wetlands, I have found. I mean, I do see them away from water too, but most of the time I spot the red-headed, it seems to be around wetlands, lakes, rivers, swampy areas. The one on the left here, if they have that red patch under the chin and on top of the head, that is the yellow-bellied sapsucker. You can see a yellow tint to the belly compared to the the red-headed woodpecker. See how white his belly is. The yellow-bellied sapsucker is often mistaken for a downy or a hairy, but look for that red patch underneath the throat, and that'll tell you the difference. This guy is actually pecking holes in the tree, not to get at the insects, but to get the sap flowing. Once the sap is flowing, it attracts insects to it, and they will come back later and eat all the insects. They also do eat some of the sap as well. Now, these guys, usually spring and summers when you're seeing them, not so much in the winter. And your sparrows. Like I said earlier, if you're not sure, just write down sparrow species. The house sparrows on the left here, they're much bigger than the other sparrows, very gray patch on the head. They're invasive. They came from Europe. Some people call them the European house sparrow, so they are introduced. The tree sparrows on the right there, black patch, that little black spot on the belly gives them away, or on the chest, I should say. Red head on them. And speaking of red heads, if it's a bright, rusty red patch on the head, that's usually the chipping sparrow. Cutesy little face. That's how I always can tell them. They have a cutesy little face, pink beak. Then you have the black and white stripe on the head. That's the white-crowned sparrow. So these are some of the more common sparrows. There are other sparrows that may, come around. Of course, this is a lot of iridescence on it, the European starling, another introduced species. Crow versus raven. Okay, if you're hearing them, which is what I always hear, I hear them before I see them. The American crow, everyone knows what the crow sounds like. And if you don't, Google it. It's a very common distinctive call. Take that call and make it more guttural, more low in tone. That's the common raven's call. Common ravens have a larger beak. Their body size is larger too, but crows, they're big, so sometimes you can mistake them for a raven. The beak does curve a little more on the tip. So the raven is bigger, has that chunkier beak, more curved beak. That's the main way you can tell the difference between these two. But I mostly can tell by the call. Guttural call, raven. Warblers, not going to see them around here, not in the winter time. Okay, so if you're in the Northeast or anywhere in the northern part of the US, you won't see the warblers on the Great Backyard Bird Count. These are more of a summer species. They're strictly insect eaters, insectivores. But I put them on here in case you're living in the southern part of the US and you're doing the Great Backyard Bird Count in the southern part. Common yellowthroat is on the left, upper left. That's the yellow warbler on the right. And one of my favorites, the chestnut-sided warbler. They have that chestnut color, that rusty red color going down the side. And the redstart is another warbler, black and white warbler. I've only seen a few of them in the wild. Black-throated blue, I've heard them, but rarely see them. These guys don't come to your feeders unless you're putting out insects like mealworms. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me. I hope you will go and join the podcast. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me and make sure that you get out and actually do the Great Backyard Bird Count this weekend. Remember, it's from Friday through Monday. If you want to know more about nature, I encourage you to visit my website at thenaturewanderer.com. I have a weekly podcast that comes out about nature. And this past week, actually, it comes out tomorrow if you're listening to this on Wednesday. It comes out on Thursday before the Great Backyard Bird Count. I have an entire episode dedicated to the Great Backyard Bird Count. So look up the Nature Wanderer podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank you. Have a great day and happy birding.